The Accelerator Podcast is here. I'm your host on tap, Monty King, inviting you to leave ordinary in the dust. Every next level of our lives demands a better version of ourselves. Our guest will inspire you to close the gap. What doesn't happen by design happens by default, so the content on tap is created for listeners to learn and grow. Visit us online at whatsontap.tv or find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, tap 5 stars and drop us a review. Hit the notification bell to never miss an episode and share your favorites to help others outrun the status quo. Let's get started. Welcome to the Accelerator Podcast. I'm your host on tap, Monty King, and our guest today is Grady Phillips, Senior Director of Workforce QA, formerly President of Corporate Medical Services, also known as CMS. Thank you for joining us today, Grady. How are you doing?
Good morning, Monty. Doing well. It's a great short week and just enjoying the weather down here in Tennessee. How are you doing?
I am doing right about amazing. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it. So look, let's dive right into it. Tell us who Workforce QA serves and what problems you solve.
Sure. Workforce QA, just like my previous company, CMS, is considered an MRO TPA. So that's Medical Review Officer and Third-Party Administrator, specifically for driver testing. And so the problem we solve is the most important part of every load, which is the driver, and just doing verification compliance checks on that driver, anything from drug and alcohol testing to DOT physical management to sleep apnea. And we're even working on being a full-fledged background check company by the end of the year.
Wow, awesome. Okay, so there's a lot of services that you guys provide, which is fantastic. But this may be a simple question, but with all the legalization that's going on, with marijuana, et cetera, I mean, do you think drug testing will continue to be a requirement?
Yeah. COVID, we're seeing major upspikes in drug use and abuse, particularly. But you're right, and there are continuing valid cases for where we are in THC, how we test for THC, how we measure impairment. Luckily, I think for all of us, the federal government is still taking a stance on the conservative approach, which is to totally eliminate THC from truck driving and from the ability to do that, simply because allowing it would create impaired drivers on the road, and that's not a risk that hopefully any of us are willing to take with tractor trailers. But other drug use is spiking, seeing a lot of other abuse. So unfortunately, for the time being, I think drug testing is still definitely part of our lives.
Mm. Yeah. You mentioned an uptick since COVID, and it makes me wonder, does with the clearinghouse now into effect, is that removing more drivers off the road than before it was enacted, or what's your thoughts on that?
Theoretically, the answer is no. In reality, I think it's definitely yes. We're seeing the actual number, and I think as people see that number climb higher and higher, it's definitely scary. And it's certainly convenient that the clearinghouse, which as of their March report still has about 130,000 drivers that are in prohibited status, that's similar to the driver shortage, which I think is, last time I heard, is measured around 70,000 drivers. But again, in theory, the clearinghouse didn't change any regulations. Nobody who had a violation suddenly became non-employable or prohibited as of the clearinghouse. It's just the clearinghouse made that information more easily available. And so, it certainly increased the allowable safety for carriers to be able to quickly determine if a driver should be prohibited or not. So it's really just, marked what we've all seen. And that uptick has certainly shown, I think, this time last year, it was maybe around 100,000 drivers, the discussion that we had. So, we're adding a significant number of drivers annually to the prohibited status.
Yeah, and I'm also curious because I've seen in some articles and some trade journals that oral fluid testing is now approved. So I'm assuming carriers can use saliva instead of urine now?
Well, no, not yet. The regulations actually take effect tomorrow. So according to the regulations, you can do oral fluid testing. And for anybody who's not aware, DOT has been urine only testing ever since its inception. And so we have new exciting times where different specimen types are on the radar. Oral fluid has been approved for DOT, but the unfortunate side is that no laboratories have been certified yet to do DOT oral testing, and there's not even a approved DOT collection device. And so when you're, with urine testing, you have a simple cup that you provide a specimen into. With oral testing, you have to put a device in your mouth, and so that device now has to become FDA approved. And according to DOT, it has to be something that is subdividable. And so, when you provide a specimen into a cup, we divide it into two different vials that are both sealed for the diligence of the driver, the due diligence for the driver to be able to have different laboratories confirm the same test. Well, DOT has taken the stance that saliva must also have a device that can be subdivided. And so, while that device doesn't exist yet, the thing that seems to make sense to people are like a set of chopsticks that you would put in your mouth, then subdivide and send to the laboratory. And again, that doesn't exist yet. So, how long will that take to actually become available to carriers? We don't know at this point how far along laboratories are in that process. It could be, end of the year, it could be 3 or 4 years.
Well, it's interesting because it seems like the oral testing came out of nowhere, but we've been hearing about the hair follicle testing for years. So is there an update on that, or can we expect the similar trend for the oral as what we've heard from the hair? What's going on there?
Certainly on different tracks, but yeah, you're right. It's exciting because we've been with just urine for so long, and now we have the opportunity for hair, oral, or urine, and how the DOT is going to allow those different specimens. Hair testing is. It was proposed. It was actually back in 2015 during the Obama administration. It was mandated to be an allowable specimen once they came up with the regulations. In 2020, they came up with regulations which were just terrible. They were just a disaster. The hair testing regulation actually required you to get a different specimen type, such as urine, to confirm the hair. And so it was just widely panned as being a really bad regulation. There is some information that maybe midsummer we should see another round of either a final rule or perhaps more proposed rules with hair regulation. So, earlier this year, a lot of us were saying that hair was just dead in the water, but it looks like it might actually have a chance of coming back as well. The different specimens all have different tools. So I've used the analogy of a golf game for a lot of people. The urine testing is just your 7-iron. You could do everything with urine testing, and we always have. It's certainly not the best for everything, but it gets the job done. The hair testing has a window of detection that can go back 90 days or more, and so it's often referred to as a lifestyle test to see if somebody, a urine test. If you can avoid drugs for a week, you can typically pass a urine test without a problem. A hair test, not so much. It's going to go a lot further back, so you can definitely decide if it's a lifestyle issue. Oral testing has a very short window of detection for most drugs, particularly for THC, which makes it really good or as close as anything to determine if you're actually impaired. And so oral testing is kind of like your short game, right? So, they all have different uses and different ideal applications.
Can you speak on the I'm probably going to mispronounce it. It's kratom?
Oh, kratom.
Kratom,
Yeah,
yes.
kratom here in Tennessee, it's sold at a lot of gas stations. Different parts of the country, it's not as popular or whatever. Kratom is actually it's from Indonesia, and interestingly, kratom is I can't remember the actual in Indonesia. It's been prohibited for many years. Kratom is considered a very dangerous drug. I think Australia considered it dangerous. USA tried to prohibit it several years ago, but they were lobbied against, and so they basically just stopped doing that. We don't do any typical testing for kratom. It's not on the DOT panel. It's not really widely tested for even in the non-DOT world, but it is a dangerous drug. It certainly has a lot of addiction potential, and the unfortunate thing is it's very hard to step off of from an addiction perspective. A lot of people look at kratom as in mild doses, it's acted as a stimulant. In excessive doses, it can actually act similar to an opioid. So a lot of people think that you can get off of opioids by using kratom. The unfortunate thing is you can't really get off of kratom. And the side effects are, according to Dr. Sentef, our MRO, the side effects are just weird. It's just strange stuff that are really hard to get around kratom, people that are really addicted to it.
Wow. Okay. Well, listen, we're going to transition real quick to what we kind of dubbed as the last call here, where I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions.
All right.
And hopefully you're not prepared to answer them. So this is just whatever's off the top of your head. Okay.
Well, I struggle with rapid fire answers, so do your best.
All right. So the first one is, what is the worst compliance advice that you've ever heard?
The worst compliance advice you've ever heard is just keep your head down and nobody will notice.
You've probably seen that in live action before, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah.
All right. So
Usually I find out when they said, "Oh, we were told just to keep our head down and no one would notice," and it all shows up, right?
there's a little bit of work to be done at that point, huh?
Yeah.
All right. So then, what is the best compliance advice that you've ever heard?
The best compliance advice you've ever heard. I don't know that this is the best, but it's the first one that stuck out. Is in today's litigious world, it seems like the DOT regulations are considered a bare minimum. So the best compliance advice, or at least good compliance advice, is do one step above. And so you can't do everything. You can't test everybody. You can't test everybody in every day. But if you'll take the DOT regs and go one step above, at least you show that you're not considering them a bare minimum.
No, that's great. That's great. All right. So the next one, we're going to get a little tricky.
All right.
What was the first concert you ever attended live?
You're asking how old I am at this point. The answer will be REM, and I think I did get a contact high at that concert when I was roughly 15, 16 years old. Yeah.
Now, is that what sparked you to get into this profession?
No. My father started this company 27 years ago. My background's engineering and surveying. This was not something that I planned, and I think a lot of us in the trucking industry can say this was not something I ever planned. It's just interesting how we got into it, and once you're here, it is an interesting profession to deal with for sure.
Yeah, once you get in, you never get out.
That's right. That's another way of saying it. Right.
All right, so the next one is I know you're a father, so what is your best bad dad joke? Or should I say worst bad dad joke?
Oh, no. All right, so you got me with the deer in headlight syndrome. What do you call a dad joke told by a mother? A faux pas.
Nice. That's good.
That work?
All right, so the last question, and this is probably the most important. Who is the greatest professional wrestler of all time?
Andre the Giant.
Wow.
His acting skills, I mean, they translated outside the stage. You could, maybe Hulk, but I've always felt like Andre was just the guy. And man, that guy could drink if you read the stories. So it was, he was quite an impressive all around guy, and a good guy too. I mean, really.
Is there a certain movie or a match that you think of when you think of Andre the Giant?
Oh, definitely The Princess Bride. We all had to watch Princess Bride a lot in high school. Again, I have 4 daughters, so I don't get to watch any, many live action events. So most of mine are rom-coms and that kind of thing. So yeah, Andre the Giant, throwing rocks at the good guy is definitely my thought on him.
Grady, listen, I've enjoyed having you on, and I know that there are going to be changes that are coming up. So I hope you come back and see us with some regular updates on what's going on from the compliance world. But let everyone know how they can get in touch with you if they've got other questions or comments, or just want to pick your brain on something that maybe they're experiencing. How can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's something that Workforce QA and CMS both have in common, is we really want to serve the client. So thanks for that opportunity. You can reach out to the Accelerator Podcast. Monty has our information. You can also reach us at wfqa.com. And we have a really good, deep list of experts that can handle the hardest questions that you deal with. Or you can, call us here at CMS 423-870-0701 if you're a phone person. So any of those are great ways to reach us.
Awesome. Yes. And like Grady said, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll help direct you accordingly, however I can. So with that being said, Grady, thank you so much for a few moments this morning. Let's do it again whenever something else happens. Let me know, and we'll be happy to have you back.
Anytime. I think we've got lots of things coming up. Thanks, Marty. Thanks, everybody.